over the summer, things have slowly started to get back to normal. People have begun returning to work, gone on holiday and sent their children back to school. But could all this be about to change?
Well, the worrying rise in coronavirus cases over the last few weeks has led to many reports that a second lockdown is on the way. So to help get some clarity, we're joined in the studio now by the Secretary of State for Health, Matt Hancock. Welcome.
Welcome.
We spoke to you a lot during lockdown.
Yeah.
Good to see you in person. Thank you for coming in. So you're here today at 11 o'clock, and we'll be covering this. Chris Whitty and Chief Scientific Officer Sir Patrick Vallance are going to be delivering a briefing.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister is going to talk to us tomorrow.
Yeah.
Are you softening us up? Are you about to lock us down again?
Well, we have seen this rise in cases, and it's a difficult moment. I've called it a tipping point. And if we do have to take action, it will be different to last time. And we've learned a huge amount about how to tackle the virus. But the number one thing for everybody is that if everybody follows the existing rules, the vast majority of people are, but if everybody does, then that will help us to control it. So it's something that we can't do alone.
What will be different to last time?
Well, I think the main thing, in terms of what we've learned, is that where people catch the disease tends to be in social settings. People coming round to your house or you going out and socialising, essentially. We've seen relatively few cases caught through schools and relatively few through people at work, because schools have got huge procedures in place to keep schools safe, and that's, you know, the return to schools has gone really well. Mm-hmm. And likewise, most employers have got COVID-secure rules in place. I mean, like here, you know, I was wearing my mask before we just came on air, and the team have got a whole load of procedures that are different to before. And that means that we can protect schools and keep schools open. We're absolutely determined to do that.
And definitely determined, because I guess we've been talking about these sort of circuit breaks, this way of sort of short-circuiting the virus now so that we don't have this extended lockdown. But could, if we don't heed what you're saying, could we get to the point where we are homeschooling again? I
really, really want to avoid that. And the evidence is that that isn't where... Schools aren't where a lot of the transmission happens. It's more about people socialising. So the first and most important thing for everybody is following the existing rules. That's why we've brought in stronger enforcement measures that we were talking about over the weekend for the small proportion of people who haven't been following the rules, which has made it more difficult for everyone.
So you've just said then that you want to keep schools open.
Yeah.
You've said it's going to be different to last time, but you're quite obviously over the next couple of days, you're going to say something.
Yeah.
Something is going to happen. So
yeah.
by listening to what you've just said then, it's the social aspect of our lives. It's the fun aspect of our lives that you're going for.
Well, the really sad thing about this virus is that it thrives on, you know, the things that make life worth living, the socialising especially. When people get close to each other, that's when it tends to pass on. And so we've got to be careful about that.
You're locking us down in our own homes socially.
Well, there are parts of the country where, sadly, already there are measures in place to say you shouldn't socialise with people outside your household. And I know the impact this has on people. I mean, I know that this is not how anybody wants to live their lives.
Well,
do you think people get...
You said that twice now, that this is the way we live our lives, this is how we live our lives. 18 people, and, you know, one is too many, but 18 people died yesterday from coronavirus.
Yeah.
125 die a week through suicide.
Yeah.
Those numbers have risen rapidly throughout lockdown. People need social interaction.
Yeah.
And so we are losing more people to suicide than we are to the virus.
The danger with the virus is when the numbers get really big, and we're seeing the cases double just over a week. So that's why we're talking about this now and thinking about the action that we need to take now. Because the problem of it doubling is that it just goes, if it gets out of control, it just goes up and up. And we saw this in March. Then it was doubling every 3 or 4 days. And because of the things that everybody's doing to keep safe, that it's only doubling every just over a week. But that does mean that while the rates are, you know, still about 4,000 cases a day at the moment, and as you say, about 20 people a day dying. Now, The problem is that if the rates keep going up and keep doubling, then we get to really big numbers.
Do you think,
like we were, like
before,
last time round?
Do you think that people at home get frustrated? Because I think we were all really surprised that when we were in serious lockdown at the time, we were really good with the rules. People really sort of obeyed them and did what they had to do. We all did our bit. I think people get frustrated now because they feel like maybe as a government you haven't done your bit, because we were all promised this sort of world amazing track and trace system. The testing was going to be incredible, so it's like, OK, we've done our bit, you do your bit. And yet that kind of is the bit that seems to be failing, and here we go, it's now down to us to save the day by all not seeing anybody and locking down.
Well, I want to make sure that we avoid that sort of lockdown we saw last time. And the truth,
but it's going backwards again, isn't it?
Well, the truth is that this it is important for all of us to follow those rules, and that of course that includes us too. Now, on the testing, we have got this testing capability now much bigger than last time, and one of the reasons that we know where it is more likely to spread is because we've got so much more than last time. But I understand the frustration.
We're hearing so many stories, though, that people who live in Twickenham can only get a test in Aberdeen, but if they put their address down as Aberdeen, they get the test in Twickenham close to them. It's been a catastrophe. How many people are you actually, who's doing the numbers? How many people are you testing? And how quickly are those tests coming back?
So yesterday we had another record high number of tests, 233,000. So it's almost...
Is that people?
That's people, yes. The capacity is just over 250,000. So that's the highest that it's been.
When will they get those results back? How long does it take to get them back?
So the majority get them back the next day, but then there's the vast majority within 48 hours. But I know there have been problems. I mean, I've seen them as well, and I can totally understand how frustrating that is if you've had to wait more than 48 hours.
But we were told about, like the moonshot, whatever the hell that meant. So all of these things that we've been told, and then, but in the early days you've got a government minister breaking the rules. Now you've got rules that mean that 30 children can't gather in the park to feed ducks, but 30 men can go out and shoot them. There are things that just don't make any sense.
Well, we've tried to simplify all those rules. I totally understand the frustration as well. We've tried to simplify them to have this rule of 6 so that it's just easy to follow, and you can't have more than 6 people close together. In fact, I was out in the park with my kids yesterday afternoon, and across the park it was absolutely full, but only in groups of 6. And, I didn't see that earlier in the summer. And I think the simplicity of the rule of 6 means that, it is just that much easier to follow. And it was being followed everywhere in the park. So it's that, we are trying to constantly make it as easy as possible for people to do the right thing. Because I know that the vast majority of people are trying to do the right thing. It's in difficult circumstances.
What about Christmas?
Yeah.
Because it's the next big date in the calendar. Families have been kept separate for most of the year. We've started to have a bit of interaction now. What's Christmas going to look like? Are we finally going to be able to hug our grandparents?
Well, I want Christmas to be as normal as possible. And the more that we can control the virus now and stop the spread now, the easier it's going to be to have a Christmas that's as close to normal as possible. And I know that's what so many people are looking forward to. It's what I hope for my family. And I just hope that we can get there. And it means taking decisions now.
How feasible is that? Because there was talk this morning of a circuit breaker, sort of a 2-week heavy lockdown, and, just to break the cycle. All you do then is kick it down the road, and it gets closer to Christmas and colder weather when people are in. The virus won't be gone by Christmas. We can't stamp it out by Christmas. People are saying that it's going to be here forever, and that maybe vaccinations, if we get them, could take the edge off it.
Yeah.
But Christmas isn't going to be normal.
As near to normal as possible. And it depends how much we can control it now. If this runs out of control now, then we'll have to take heavier measures in the future. The more we can control it now by everybody doing their bit, including us, absolutely, but everybody together, then the easier it's going to be to have as normal a Christmas as possible.
What do you regret the most about since March? So if you change one thing, what would you have changed?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I wish that we'd known earlier how the virus spreads before people have symptoms, because that changes how you manage it. Because at the start we thought that it was only when you have symptoms that you can spread it, but actually it's before, and that means things like, you know, if you're perfectly well, then you need to be more careful. So that led to changes in the face mask policy.
Do you regret what you did with care homes?
Well, the issue with care homes was tied to this asymptomatic spread, because we thought that it was only when you had the symptoms.
So you'd have done that differently?
Yes, absolutely. And we've put in place a winter plan for this winter that takes the lessons of what happened in the peak, and we've worked with the care home sector over the summer to make sure that care homes are protected.
Airports, people coming into the country without being tested, would you change that?
Well, there isn't that much evidence that a huge amount of transmission came that way, but we have now got a quarantine policy in place, which I think is much better than previously. But again, that's been controversial, right? It's been controversial because it's really got in the way of people's summer holidays.
So do you have the Chancellor Rishi saying you cannot lock it down, because if you do, then the country will never recover, our economy will never recover. You can't lock it down.
No, and I've seen some of this in the newspapers. It's completely overblown. You know,
so Rishi says we could cope with another lockdown.
Well, Rishi and I talk all the time about this, and it helps that, you know, my parents, my family, I come from a small business background. His parents both work in the NHS, so we both understand the other point of view, and we talk all the time about it. And I want to avoid the economic damage, and I understand it. I feel it because that's my family background. And the question is, how do you keep control of the virus, which we need to do, whilst limiting as much as possible the economic impact and the education impact, and, you know, keeping schools open?
You said there that you feel it, and I just wonder how you protect yourself from that in a way, because you must be utterly exhausted. You've been in this from the get-go. It's not the kind of thing that you can just go home and go to sleep and not think about and leave work at the front door, really, because it must stay with you. How do you protect yourself from that?
Well, I'm sleeping okay. I mean, I don't get as much time. I don't get much time off. But the reason that that's okay is because, you know, I get up in the morning, I do everything I possibly can, try to make the best judgments and balancing all these things, you know, the impact on the economy, the impact on health, and then I go to bed, and then I wake up in the morning and I do my best. And, you know, of course we don't get all the decisions right, and but I think so long as you're doing your best in the national interest, just concentrating on that and aiming off all the brickbats that you get that people like to throw at me, then that's what allows me to sleep at night.
You had the virus, and so did the Prime Minister, and we know how very serious it was for him. Yeah. And we also know that it takes a long time to recover from these things. How fit is the Prime Minister?
He's fighting fit. Yeah, he's full of beans. And yeah, I was lucky. I recovered very quickly. But he's absolutely recovered from it and is as vigorous as always.
Does it change, once you've had it once, does it change how you are going forward?
Well, they do think that it makes a change, but the problem is that there are some people who've caught it a second time. Yeah. Because I would love to get to a position where you can say, if you've had it once, then you're safe, and they say that you're less likely to have as damaging symptoms, but the problem is we still think you can pass it on. We're not confident that you can't pass it on, and therefore all of us, including those of us who've had it before, have still got to abide by the same rules. So therefore, that's right. So the vaccine is the great. I call it the cavalry, right? The cavalry is coming.
Where is it? When's it coming?
Yeah, well, you know, the scientists are doing an amazing job, you know, and the regulators who have got to check that it's completely safe. Yeah. You know, we saw that it was paused a couple of weeks ago. That was because we're absolutely determined to make sure that it's safe. Now, we're talking about for the mass rollout, we're talking about the first bit of next year, if all goes well.
First bit being
hopefully in the first few months. There's still a chance of it coming on stream before Christmas.
Wow.
But not in. But then we've then got to roll it out, and the first people who'll get it are the people who are most vulnerable, people in care homes, older people, and there's a series of different vaccines. But we are talking about essentially for it to have an impact on how we live our lives. We're talking about the start of next year, but that the progress is going. It's going okay. It's going okay, but it's safely as she goes. We can't rely on that because no vaccine is certain.
I think an element of the population will cut you a bit of slack here and there because no one's ever dealt with this before. But there are businesses who get confused because we can come back. No, we can't come back. Decisions are made, and suddenly you find that your business isn't able to open. So what happens this weekend? If you're a landlord, if you own a pub, will we be in the pubs this weekend?
Well, we'll be absolutely clear about changes that we need to make in the very very near future.
So that's a no then.
It's not a no, and it's not a yes. It is a we've been working on this all weekend. We haven't taken the final decisions about what we need to do in response to the surge that we've seen in the last few weeks.
When will we be told if we can go to the pub?
In the very near future. So the exact timing
tomorrow night with the Prime Minister
hasn't quite been set, but I'm hearing the same rumours that you are. I spoke to the Prime Minister this morning.
What did he say?
And he's as worried as we all are about the rise in the number of cases, and we have to make a final decision about what's the best response to that. We've all seen the evidence from the scientists, and the reason the scientists and the Chief Medical Officer are going on air at 11 o'clock today is so that the whole country will see the same information that we're seeing to make the judgments that we're making. We want to do this in as open a way as possible, and so that everybody can see why we're taking decisions that we have to take.
When do you think life returns to the old normal? Does it ever return to the old normal?
I think some things have changed for good, haven't they? Some things have. I think that we all Zoom far more, and I think that people are going to take infectious diseases more seriously forever, and that's no bad thing. But in terms of the things that affect everyday life, I really hope if this vaccine or one of the vaccine comes off in the early bit of next year, we are looking I hope by next summer to be through this.
You just said then to taking these sort of diseases seriously, infectious diseases. Does this mean that already you're working on what happens if this should happen again and what you do?
Oh, yes. And we've learnt a huge amount. Now, there isn't any imminent... I don't want to worry people. There is no imminent sign of anything like that. But, by God, we'd be better prepared next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.